Good morning, members. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your phone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If you have to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function, then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph so that everyone can follow. And please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We've got a few important reports to consider today, so I anticipate we'll deal with business in our usual efficient manner. Before I get on to Sedgwick and apologies, could I just thank the former chair, Councillor McGregor, for her custodianship of the role, just to recognise that, so thanks Gail. But onwards now to item 1, which is Sedgwick and apologies. Claire, can you provide the Sedgwick and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've got 13 members currently present, 5 in the Council Hall, 8 members on Teams, being Councillors Brodie, Hagman, Ingalls, Jordan, Marsh, McGregor, McCammon and Young. 2 members currently not present, being Councillors Giusty and Johnston.
Thank you, Claire. I approve of members' remote participation for this meeting. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? No? Okay. Item 3 is the minute of the previous meeting on 21st of February 2023. Can we note the minutes of the meeting held on that day? I can't do that because I wasn't on this committee at that time. So we've got a hand up. Thanks, Archie. We've got a hand up in the chat. Councillor Hagman.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Chair. Yep. So I appreciate this is for noting. So forgive me. I'm assuming, I'm trying to think back to our last full council where I'm assuming that we've agreed these minutes. But I just wanted to just touch upon item 4 of the previous minutes, which was the revised guidance on the operation of local authority audit committees. You alluded at the start there, Chair, that obviously there has been a change of roles and change of administration. So certainly from my point of view, I'm now in that opposition role, which is an officially recognised role. I'm not sure if other groups have had a change of membership. Obviously, we have within our group. I think you yourself alluding to the fact that you've come back into this committee. And I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to actually look at how the committee is working? Obviously, that report that's due to come back after the summer recess, is there an opportunity for members to feed into that potentially through a workshop or something of that ilk? I'm really conscious that, part of that agreement is that we would get further information back, and then there's the potential, as per the report, for consideration by the annual review of standing orders. So I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to do maybe some refresher training, considering roles have changed, because actually where there was administration members on the committee, we're now officially opposition members. So yeah, any chance of some refresher training so that we can ensure that as the official opposition, we are doing our job to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. Yeah, so page 9, 4.2 does agree to bring a report back. But I think the general point, irrespective of whether we're opposition or members of the committee just per se, I think it would be good practice, I would suggest, if members are minded, to have either some kind of workshop or seminar where we could look through being an effective member of this committee and basically what's entailed in the audit, risk and scrutiny functions. So I don't know if Vlad, if you can maybe assist with suggesting something.
Yes, thank you, Chair. More than happy to take that fully on board, and we'll go away and look at one, the kind of timescale for that, and two, the content, and potentially whether we bring in externals to speak to us and help us out with that. So we'll take that away as officers, and I'll liaise with Chair and Vice Chair thereafter to keep them updated as to where we are with the seminar, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, I think there's general sort of tentative noddings of head. So, Councillor Hagman, is that would that help just assist you with that point? Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really clear. Thank you, Vlad. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, the minutes are noted. Membership of the Joint Safety Committee. So, item 4, we've got Sue Hawken-Pethick here to assist members if they have any questions. Is there anything you'd like to add to the report, Sue, before we bring in members?
Just to say, just to promote people to join, because elected members to join, because it is certainly a very engaging joint safety committee, and I think it's very advantageous for members to be part of the process and all the future going forward for improvements in our council. It is only 4 meetings a year. So it isn't a heavy commitment, and that can be online. The next meeting is on the 30th of May, then the 12th of September, and then the 6th of December for this year's programme.
Thanks, Sue. That's helpful. Now we've got 3 members of the committee, or 3 members already on that. So looking for nominations. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm conscious a member of my group has had to come off because they're no longer on the committee here today. So could I potentially, if they're willing to accept, nominate yourself, Councillor Thompson, and also Councillor Beretti, again, with your consent?
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. Yeah, it's probably be helpful and probably appropriate if Chair of Audit, Risk and Scrutiny, along with the Vice Chairs, attending the Joint Safety Committee. So happy to accept that. Councillor Beretti, I think you've been given the other short straw.
What short straw? Yes, quite happy to accept.
Thank you. And there's still another vacancy, so I don't know if there's any other nominations for that. Or we can obviously pick that up at a later time, but I think if there's at least 5 of us on that Joint Safety Committee.
Yeah, I think it might be appropriate. It's members of the Audit and Risk Scrutiny Committee that's actually members of the Health and Safety Committee. So if groups want to go back and check with their members to see if there's any interest in that, it doesn't have to be politically, numbered, if for want of a better word, but it can be in.
No, thank you. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, I've sat on this one for a number of years, and I'm quite happy to serve on that committee. I may not make the 13th, but I'm happy to serve and be a member of the committee.
So there's nothing beats a willing volunteer. So if you want to make up that additional number, Councillor Scobie. Absolutely. So if anyone else is otherwise minded, but happy to support Councillor Scobie as well. Yep, excellent. Thank you. We've got the full complement. Thanks for that, Sue, and thank you, members, for being so aggressively positive about that. Thank you. That takes us on then to the internal audit plan, item 5. I think we have Kevin and Vlad here to speak to this. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add at the moment, Kevin or Vlad, but otherwise I can open up to members, but I don't know if you want to say a couple of words about this.
This is obviously the internal plan for the audit function, and as you'll see within the report, we lay out the kind of indicative timeline for reporting, and also how long some of these planned audit works are going to take place. Now you've got 3.4.2 and 3.4.3 in essence kind of summarises that. Kevin's here to speak to any specific questions that you may have as well. So I'll leave that with members. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I'm just looking at 3.4.2 with the table that's actually in it, and all of it seems to be financial. And I'm sure we do other things than financial. And I was just wondering just to have a look at some of the issues that I'm certainly getting across the piece, and members from my group are getting across the piece, is the insurance for claims against road defects, and it's just so that people understand what the process actually is. There is clear concern that some of the constituents don't understand the process going through, and it's just to get a form of raising awareness for constituents going forward. It may be that it's just a quick email to all members or something like that, but it's just something that's fair. But I see in the grid that it's just financial stuff, and we need to be looking at processes as well.
No, that's helpful. Vlad, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As members will see, 3.4.2, as Councillor Rivers rightly pointed out, that's purely to do with the financial systems, and these are the kind of ongoing reports that we must bring back to Audit, Risk and Scrutiny. Within 3.4.3, we've got wider areas that is what our intention is for this particular year coming forward. That question on the roads defects, if it's okay with members, I'll take that offline with yourself, Councillor Driver, and just find the right mechanism for that, and hopefully that'll be helpful for all concerned.
Yeah, if we can capture that as an action, that'd be helpful. Thank you. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we're being asked. There's two distinct issues here that have been put together in one report, essentially. So we're being asked to approve and refresh the internal audit charter. I think it would be quite useful to hear what has been refreshed, what has changed. There's no track changes, or what's different. What have we updated since the last one? And do we update this charter every year? Do we every 3 years? How often do we? Again, forgive me if my memory is not serving me correct, because I can't remember the last time we looked at this. And certainly there's no. I'm just double checking. There's no background papers as attached to the report to actually for me to even go and look at the previous internal audit charter. But then secondly, we're being asked to note and provide feedback on the internal audit plan. So we're not being asked to approve the plan. We're just being asked to give feedback, and considering we've been asked, and Vlad's agreed to go and do a little bit of work, and perhaps a members' workshop, so there's greater understanding for members of the committee. Will we be able to look at this again in the future? Because essentially we're not agreeing the plan, we're just commenting on, we're noting and providing feedback. So just a little bit of clarity about the actual report. So first of all, what's changed with the internal audit charter? And will we be able to look at the audit plan again? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. So in terms of the first point, what's the refresh element of the internal audit charter, Vlad?
I'll maybe take the questions the other way around, if that's okay, Chair. And I'll maybe get or ask Kevin if he can help us out with the charter itself. In terms of the question on the feedback, absolutely. This is kind of officers kind of led process with that consultation, in essence, coming to members for members to have that oversight, and also obviously we'll take on board any feedback from members, which is what 2.2 is asking for in terms of that overall internal audit plan. But that internal audit plan does sit with that internal audit function rather than with members as such. Hence is that note and provide feedback that we'll fully take on board in the same way that we've taken on board feedback from senior management along the way. So that probably hopefully answers that particular question, but I'll bring in Kevin if he's be so kind as helping us out with the charter history and thereafter where we're at with it. That'd be helpful.
Thanks, Vlad. Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, yes, the audit charter is presented annually to the committee along with the audit plan. So it's 12 months ago, I think June last year was the previous iteration of the plan, of the charter. The charter was modified a bit more in 2020, and that's when members gave their last formal approval to the charter. So the 2 years interim to that, I don't think we made any changes to it, so we provided it for context for members when, when looking at the plan. This year, I think some minor amendments only. I'm sorry, I don't have a note of those, but it would be just to job titles and that sort of stuff. There were no substantial changes to the charter made for this year's submission. So I'm sorry, I can't. If you want, I'll give you a note afterwards to members of the committee to highlight what those track changes were. But my look at it suggests that they're very minor, and that the charter as presented is substantially the same as last year's charter, Chair.
Thanks, Kevin. I don't know if it might be something to consider in the future about the subsequent refreshes might include track changes, but maybe that's something we can pick up later. Councillor Hagman, does that address your two questions?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And again, we can maybe address some of these discussions in a further workshop discussion forum. But yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got Councillor Malcolm Johnson and then Councillor Scobie.
Thanks, Chair. I can probably help you out with the changes because I took the time to print out the previous one. And it's basically an addition of the Section 95 Officer, Head of Finance and Procurement, and the Head of Governance, along with the senior management team, and it's on page 2 of the charter. I was kind of wondering why those changes were made. And as you said, Chair, I think it's important that we actually get the changes presented. It makes it a lot easier rather than having to troll through it. But that was the only changes. So why is the Section 95 officer and the Head of Governance been added to that? I thought they would have been part of the senior leadership and council management team anyway. So did we actually really need to change it? Now, the next thing you mentioned about staff have been approached 3.4.4 for suggested audits. And I know we've got the 3 areas that the committee wanted to focus on. So when we come back to audit hours and the audit plan, where do they fit in that audit plan? Is there enough time allocated to that? And do you have the resources? The next thing is you've got a temporary member of staff. How long is the temporary member of staff going to stay? Is that going to be a permanent thing? And I know the head auditor's got to report if there's any chance that we don't have the resources to carry these things out. But so is there a risk there that we won't be able to? Is that enough?
That'll do for starters, Councillor Johnson. So yeah, the few things there. Obviously, that question on the articulation of the Section 95 officer, etc., in the report, and just about the audit plan and the resources required for that. Obviously, we've got an allocation in the table in terms of audit days, for example. But in terms, are you able to help with Councillor Johnson's questions there, Kevin? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So kind of working backwards a bit, and I'm sorry if I lose my place. I'm sure somebody will correct me. So the plan that's presented represents a calculation of the resources that are expected to be available for the year. And as such, therefore, this is the plan which at this time we expect we can deliver. The temporary member of staff is on a secondment basis, which ends on the 31st of December. So resourcing going forward for the team and so on are matters for the head of service in discussion with various others. So we'll see. But the plan includes the fact that we've got an extra pair of hands, so to speak, to December at least. So it's worked through. What was the next question? Apologies.
Yeah, so I think, to speak on behalf of Councillor Johnson, I think there was another point about the names that were added on page 2 of the of the report, and why they hadn't been articulated before, or why they were now being added.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not in a position to give you a full answer on that. The adjustment to the audit charter took place when I wasn't at work, so I would say that they were relatively minor adjustments, improvements. They're not. I don't see them as meant to signify anything particularly. They're just, if you like, for neatness, tidiness, completion, I don't see the charter as being substantially changed by those alterations, Chair. But I can't give you any more than that, sorry.
No, thanks, Kevin. I think I'll bring Vlad in briefly, just maybe to touch on that.
Yeah, happy to for us to send to all members of this committee the kind of track change version. I think that would probably be helpful for members. But my understanding is that in essence we need to update any changes in structure, and therefore that's what we've done. And in effect, maybe other roles that maybe were called something else are now the head of governance and assurance, and the monitoring officer element of it needs to be fully encompassed within that. So I think those are probably the changes that have happened, but I'll take away an action for us to circulate to all members in essence the track change from the previous, so that you can see it categorically within that.
Okay. Thanks, Vlad. Councillor Johnson, does that assist you?
Well, it assists me up to the point that the change has been made, and I'm presuming the Section 95 officer and the head of governance has been highlighted for a reason, because my understanding was they are part of the senior leadership and council management team already. So that was in the charter before, and it was potentially unnecessary, unless there's a reason I don't understand why there needed to be a change at all. But equally, my other wee question was about 3.4.4, about staff being consulted about other audits. I mean, what services are coming forward looking for audits, as any? And then that led back onto the fact that as members of the committee, we've got 3 audits we want to go forward, and it was really around where they fitted into the plan. That was the question about the resources.
No, thank you. So yeah, just in terms of 3.4.4 then, presumably, and I would expect something to come back to members so that we could see, well, here are the suggestions for future pieces of work to be included in any plan going forward, so we would have sight of that. So would it be right in assuming that's how that would work in terms of being presented to members for our consideration? Vlad?
Yeah, I think moving forward, again, and that might be part and parcel of the seminar that we have earlier discussed, what we will envisage is having a very clear timeline to provide to elected members in terms of the various consultations that happen within the forming of this internal audit plan. That will include the various consultations to services, the consultations with elected members, and thereafter putting forward what we are going to take forward as an internal audit function within this kind of annual report, for you to note that. But that's once we've gone through that very thorough exercise. So moving forward, we are envisaging, and I've discussed this with the Chief Exec, this flowing through SLT and CMT in terms of that ask and scrutiny for all officers. But what I can provide is the assurance that both the Section 95 officer and myself have met with heads of services and taken on board any requests that they've made along the way, and in essence put that to action. Some of those don't necessarily require a full audit on those terms, and Kevin might be able to come on the back of that just to support that. Some of them might just simply be that kind of sounding board, or in essence extra assistance in terms of their processes, and making sure that we have that overall audit function of early intervention and prevention there, rather than simply waiting to carry out a full audit for matters. So again, I'm keen that the internal audit functions involved in major projects, for example, and so on, to provide their perspective on matters at an early stage to guide that kind of effective working within the relevant projects that we may be taking forward. So there's overall kind of requests that have come from the relevant heads of services, and it's not necessarily internal audit plans as such. They're plans that we'll deliver on and actions that we'll deliver on, but not necessarily audit in themselves, if you know what I mean. So hopefully that's helpful for members. I'll bring in Kevin just to kind of maybe put some meat on the bones of what I've just discussed.
Okay, thanks, Vlad. Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a typical plan preparation exercise involves consulting heads of service. It also involves sort of horizon scanning from our own resources and so on, and also disclosures that have been made to us across the year by management about issues and so on. When somebody sort of comes to us and says we've been having a problem in this area, it doesn't necessarily result in an immediate audit, and very often the service is working on a problem or progressing towards a better solution, more efficient working and so on. So the engagement of internal audit is useful, but also has to be timed correctly so that management are able to take any observations we would wish to make and so on, rather than us coming in the middle of a fight. So they're not a fight, a sort of a battle that they're trying to make an improvement on. So the plan in any year consists of core work, about 50% of main financial systems work, much as Councillor Driver referenced, and about 50% on what we variously call departmental business systems. And some of those are things that we spot and on our own account would wish to look at because we think they're relevant. And in some cases, a proportion of that is also requests, should we say. Those requests come from services through dialogue and discussion, but also they're influenced by members themselves at this committee. So where this committee develops an outlook or a question or a concern about something, again, it's not an immediate commission of a piece of work. What it is discussion. Some of that concern can be dealt with in different ways other than through an internal audit process, but where an internal audit will be useful and helpful and will elucidate the situation and also perhaps make improvements for recommendations, then we'll do an audit. So what our job is about assurance and principally controls assurance, internal controls assurance. We also tend to governance matters to some extent at a more high level, and also we've been supporting risk management, but in ordinary course, we'd also be concerned with the risk. So if you like, that's the cut of what internal audit does, and we should have a plan that gives us confidence that we're looking at the right things. That plan always remains flexible. So if something emerges, it's always been possible to adjust the plan if necessary to make a response to an emerging issue, but also to give us a core of work which allows us to provide the annual internal assurance statement, which basically is designed to draw your attention as the committee to any matters or concerns relating to the control environment that's operated in the last 12 months. So sorry for a slightly longer reply, Chair, but I hope that's helpful for the context.
Thanks, Kevin. I think so. Malcolm, Councillor Johnson, is that sufficient for the moment?
Well, it's sufficient insofar as it goes. I mean, we have the audit plan, and I understand we routinely do these financial systems audits and things. Where I'm kind of heading was where for example, the three topics that we've chosen as a committee, where they fit into the plan. And then if we have additional work coming along, have we got the resources to deal with that? And then part of the question of that is, where does the priority lie? We've got the 3-year cycle of audits. We've then got the members and the committee's request for audits, and then we've got other things to look at. So where does everything fit in the pecking order? And because I realise the whole thing's going to be resource limited. I mean, you with the best will in the world, you couldn't go around and audit everything. It's not going to be possible. So it's a slight question then about the priority, and then how is the priority decided?
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. So I think there's something there about areas where we want to apply specific scrutiny, and I suppose internal audit function. And this is maybe where the workshop would be particularly beneficial for all members, because I think there's the more we hear about this in these particular answers, I think we maybe have to come to maybe a shared understanding of what the workload is, how we're applying the resources we do have, and then what's member-led, what's normal officer business, what's included in an audit plan, what's a suggestion for consideration, but it turns out actually it's just a sounding board that the audit team need to be. So I think there's a range of roles and functions that we probably could all do with understanding a little bit better. I don't know if that's fair reflection, but I'll give Vlad the final word on that one, if that's okay.
Chair, through you, absolutely. I think you've summarised the position. I think, as I alluded to earlier, I think quite a lot of this discussion and these further scrutiny within the function could be dealt with at that seminar, and we can make a point of obviously going through, one, the processes, but two, the reality of capacity within that particular seminar, rather than thrash that out here today.
So are you content with that for now, Councillor Johnson? I'm sure we'll continue to discuss this.
I'm sorry. I know I can become a bit of an anorak with this particular committee, to be honest. But no, that's fine as far as it goes with the seminar. I look forward to that, and then potentially as a result of the seminar, I think there maybe might be some actions to come out of it. But I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to hold this any longer. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I apologise, I got my order mixed up, but it's actually Councillor Beretti first, then Councillor Scobie. So Councillor Beretti.
I think it's just highlighted my question that there are so many things here to understand, and still being a new councillor, getting my head around this. Now, there's no mention in this part of Audit Scotland and its role. So how does it play into this role of internal audit, or does it not? So I would like a clarity on that.
Yeah, thank you. So I think Audit Scotland are external auditors, but I mean, Vlad, if you maybe just want to give chapter and verse on that, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'll probably bring in Kevin just to confirm my gut instinct and reaction on that, which is in essence, absolute first and foremost, Audit Scotland are external auditors. However, that there's an ongoing communication and liaison between internal audit and external audit, which will continue through ourselves in terms of my particular role as monitoring officer, but also Section 95 officer, and also the Chief Internal Auditor role, that will continue to have that conversation with external auditors. So again, if they highlight things that we need to take on board in terms of potential audits, then of course that's part and parcel of that process as well. And as Kevin's highlighted, from time to time we may identify matters that we specifically want to triage and prioritise, which might in essence affect what we've got in terms of the kind of longer term planning. So depending on the risk associated with that. So I think from my perspective, there's an ongoing conversation and liaison with external auditors, and that building of relationship so that we can feed into each other's work as such. I don't know if maybe through you, Chair, Kevin wants to come in on that.
Okay. Thanks, Vlad. Kevin, anything to add to that?
No, Chair, nothing to add.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Beretti?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I would look forward to the seminar, because I suspect that there will be a lot more clarity for all of these issues for all us new members. Thank you.
Yeah, this seminar is getting a really big build-up now, I'm noticing. So, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I realise I'm coming in a backcloth of resources and capacity, and I'm looking at 3.4.4. Again, pleasant to hear what Kevin was saying, and it's 50-50 financial and then service delivery. I actually thought it was 80-20, with a high degree of 8% on financial scrutiny and audit. So I'm pleased to hear that. But it's just to maybe suggest under 3.4.4, and that's the unmet care needs, the number of hours in the care service, and it's the cause and effect of that and the impact that has on the service delivery and to the recipients of that service Also to look at it in terms of the reputational risk to the council, should we not be able to deliver, notwithstanding it's Health and Social Care Partnership who deliver, but the council is a partner in that organisation. And it's looking at what is the forward plan in that respect, because it was sitting about 3,500 hours, reduced to 3,000, and I think now again on the increase with delayed discharges and so forth, and then a target of trying to reach 2,000. So it's really the scrutiny of that service, and what is the audit on it in terms of our ability to deliver to those most in need. So it's just a suggestion, Chair.
Yeah, so when I read this paragraph and ideas being developed for possible inclusion in the plan, I think, and again, this is maybe building up the seminar a wee bit, but clearly there's areas where we have concern about how we're setting ourselves up to deliver or contribute towards the delivery of needs or unmet needs in this case. But one part of this is clearly about the monitoring and management of existing systems and financial services, and there'll be those which support the care sector, for example, which may or may not be needing some attention in terms of their efficiency or effectiveness. But in terms of that type of suggestion, how do we build that into a plan that we can take forward so it's clear what members are looking at in terms of the priorities alongside the internal audit function as well? So I would just put that to the audit team in terms of how do we resource that and how do we bring those forward as suggestions that this committee can then determine that these are what we want to look at in the next cycle. Vlad?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to that kind of the internal audit plan discussion that we're having in terms of what we're asking for is those suggestions that we can take on board, and then obviously we'll put that in place in terms of a plan. It does not necessarily mean that member suggestions will definitely be taken forward. So just like, again, that consultation process that we're having with internal heads of services and the relevant CMT SLT members. So what I'm suggesting is that at this point in time is for members to put forward suggestions. We'll take that on board and try and accommodate that as best we can. However, that might not always be possible. So just to bear that in mind in terms of the discussion. But I've noted down that particular point, and I think that's been raised before. So I'll go away and discuss that with the internal audit team in terms of seeing whether we can accommodate that particular request.
Okay, thanks, Vlad. Thanks, Councillor Scobie, to add to that.
I think it's a bit like the Henry Ford there. You can any colour of car you like as long as it's black. It's asking in 3.4.4 for suggestions. So, aye, and I'm sure CLT and CMT or whatever, I'll all come back and say, but it's a suggestion that we do look at it because it's got a reputational risk to this council if we can't deliver on the expectations and indeed unmet needs. So it's just to look at that, to look at cost and effect. I'm starting to repeat myself, but quite happy with what Vlad said.
No, thank you. And a suggestion is not a commitment, but it can certainly be taken on board, and I'm sure we'll come back to that. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, Chair, and I think obviously it's pretty important that members bring forward suggestions, but it's not always audit and risk that needs to scrutinise everything. The committees themselves need to scrutinise some of the decisions as well, and we're not going to do their job. They can do their own job, but certainly where there is an issue that may have been done through the committee that there is further concern about, then it may come back to here. But it's just to make sure that, there may be suggestions that come to us about going forward, but if they can then go back to their committees rather than the audit and risk, that's the way to take it forward.
Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, just on that point, I fully get what Arch is saying in terms of that there is a scrutiny role on all committees, but this is one where I don't know where it actually lies. Whether it lies at social work or whether it lies at full council as the partner organisation. So, if it's at social work, then fine. Again, it's just a suggestion, but if it's social work that scrutinises that, then as long as they have that role, and that's no defined, as I understand it, that is the role, because it was full council that appoints to the various bodies. So it's where that service lies. So I take the point Archer's making in terms of course, services have got the scrutiny role, but they may need to be reminded.
I'm just, it puts me in mind of, I think one of the delegations for this is to call in for scrutiny any inspection or value for money report received by a strategic committee. Now, given the financial focus on this particular internal audit plan, there's maybe something there where if a report had gone to a strategic committee and we felt actually that should be called in for scrutiny, there's maybe mechanisms which would allow a certain thing if it falls within a certain remit, but would that be the sort of thing that's appropriate just in terms of governance? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's within the delegations of this committee, as you've pointed out, Chair, and also just to back what Councillor Driver has said, absolutely, I think first and foremost, and Councillor Scobie's agreed, that is finding the relevant committee to scrutinise, and the other thing to note is sometimes we're already carrying out some of these kind of further kind of scrutiny and processes, and reports have been requested by members on specific points within those particular service committees, or at times, as we know, full council. So there is maybe other kind of scrutiny avenues for members, but this particular committee can call it in as per the delegations which you've alluded to.
Thank you. So I don't see any other hands up on the list. So with that then, can we approve the refreshed internal audit charter and note, we've obviously provided some feedback on the internal audit plan, but if we're happy to note that and acknowledge the suggestions that have been made so far. Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item 6, which is external audit plan for 2022-23, and we have Gillian Ross, Peter Lindsay and Fiona Mitchell-Knight here to assist members if they have any questions. So is there anything you'd like to add just as preamble to the report before we open it up to members?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, please, Chair. If I could, I'd like to just introduce the paper and explain a brief summary of what is in the paper for members, particularly for newer members. Just by way of context, in Scotland, the Accounts Commission hold local government bodies to account. And on behalf of the Accounts Commission, Audit Scotland appoints auditors to carry out the external audits. And I've been appointed as your auditors for a 5-year period starting for 22-23. Just for your interest, I'm also the appointed auditor for the Health Board and the IJB. So bring together knowledge of how partners work together in the area, and I think that's an important part of our role. And so here, working with Peter Lindsay, Senior Audit Manager, and other members of my audit team on the audit, and presenting to you today our plan. And in compiling the plan, we've been talking to the Head of Finance and the team, familiarising ourselves with the Council and getting to understand how the Council's operating, the challenges in the Council, and also the risks in the Council. And as part of that work, we've also been having discussions with internal audit team in helping us to focus on what might be the risks from our perspective and for the scope of our work. I'd like to draw your attention to page 36 of the report, and that describes the responsibilities of ourselves and the Council. And that describes how all auditors across Scotland carry out the audit that follows the scope of the Code of Audit Practice, which is published by Audit Scotland. And also our audit is designed to comply with international standards of auditing, ISAs, that you'll see references throughout our plan and taken forward in our work. Just like to draw attention particularly to paragraph 11 about the communication of fraud or suspected fraud. And in that paragraph, I invite you and members of the committee to inform me or members of the team if you become aware of any concerns around alleged fraud or suspected fraud, either today or at any point in the future. I'd like to say, you know, you've always got the opportunity to speak to me or members of the audit team if you would like to do that. So it's a bit like that point in the wedding when I go quiet and say, speak now or forever hold your peace. But I'm hoping there's nothing to say there. So our audit has two really important aspects, and the first of those is the audit of the accounts or the financial statements, and we describe our approach to that from page 37 of our plan, and it describes that we take a risk-based approach to focusing our work on what we consider are the material areas or the areas where there's significant risks. And at page 39, we detail two specific risks that are our focus. And the first one of those, this is where we refer here to the ISAs, and that is a risk that you'll find in all public sector audit plans across Scotland. And that just reflects the fact that no matter how good the control environment is in any organisation, that senior management could always override the controls if they chose to do that. So it's always a focus of our audit that we look at those controls with scepticism, and rightly so. But we don't expect that to be a particular issue, and we're not raising it because there is a particular risk here. It's a risk in any organisation. Risk 2, that is specific to the council, but is also common in all the annual audit plans that I'm certainly presenting. And that reflects the fact that the valuation of assets, and particularly other land and buildings, is a very significant figure in your balance sheet. And councils use rolling revaluation processes to revalue their assets, usually on a 5-year basis. And that's the case here. But of course, if markets on assets are changing within that 5-year period, there is a risk that those asset values could have changed significantly in between those valuation periods. And so we look at what controls are in place in the council to ensure that those valuations remain relevant and are not materially misstated on an annual basis. So that will be a focus of our work. We also refer on page 40 to another area of focus, the pension liability. And again, that's a very large figure, and it swings hugely from year to year depending on valuation of markets. And the actuaries value those figures for you, and those figures are reflected on the accounts. So in some ways, they're valued every year, so less risky than, for instance, the value of land and buildings, because they are valued every year. But we also look at it as a focus as well because of the huge size of those figures in your accounts. So the rest of that section goes into a little bit more detail about what we'll consider through our audit, including the group accounts, and we have specific responsibilities around the Scottish charities that are administered by the council, and that's described in there also. So the audit of the accounts is the most important part of our work, because that gives you independent assurance on the accounts, which is the fundamental process whereby the council demonstrates its accountability for the funds and how they've been used in the year. So really important. But also in the public sector across Scotland, we carry out what we call wider scope and best value audit work. And page 44 onwards describes that work. So we're not only auditing the accounts, but we're reflecting on what they tell us about the financial position of the council and how effective the financial management has been in reporting that position. And we also look forward into the future and how sustainable the council services are with their current financial position and how well the council is managing that position. We reflect there on governance and how effectively the council is using the resources to improve outcomes. A really important part of our work in councils and a big focus for the Accounts Commission is our best value audit work, and that's described there at page 46. And the new Code of Audit Practice is asking for a new approach for the audit of best value in councils. So there will no longer be best value assurance reports like the one that was published on the council in 2021. Instead, all the work is going to be carried out by the local audit team and reported through the annual audit reports. The Accounts Commission, however, do want to hear from the Controller of Audit on a periodic basis on how each council is performing, and they've asked for a 5-year programme to be put in place for this year's for this audit appointment. And Dumfries and Galloway is in year 1 of the reporting programme. And so in February 2024, the Controller of Audit will be reporting to the Accounts Commission a brief report which will be put together with our annual audit report. And all the best value work that we're doing this year on the Council will be summarised in the annual audit report and reflected upon by the Controller. And so the Accounts Commission will discuss the best value progress being made in the Council with the audit team and the Controller of Audit report Controller of Audit. So a similar process in terms of the best value assurance report, in terms of the public accountability for the best value in the Council, but it takes on a different prominence in that it's based on our annual audit reports. So the annual audit report will come to the Council at the end of this year's audit activity, and I'll talk about the timelines in a minute. The Commission has also asked that all auditors carry out thematic work in all councils each year. And this year we've been asked to report on the effectiveness of council leadership in developing new local strategic priorities. So this is following the elections in May 2022. And we've all been given a programme of work to follow in all the councils so that we're all looking at consistent things across Scotland. And we've been asked to present a separate report on that work, and we'll be presenting that report to this committee, aiming for the June committee. And then the summary of those findings will be also included in our annual audit report, which will become part of the Controller's consideration. So going over that in a bit more detail than I normally would, but I think it's important because you're included in year 1 of that programme to get an understanding of what is coming on the best value. So also in the rest of that section, page 45, we reflect on one of the wider scope audit risks that we will be focusing on as part of that best value work, and that is performance monitoring and reporting. And that follows through from the previous best value assurance report and also progress reported by your previous auditors, Grant Thornton. So that will be a particular focus for us. Just like to move on then to the timetabling of our audit, and so page 48 talks about the timetable, and we reflect there that the struggles that the audit profession is having in recovering from COVID. So many audits were signed off late for the previous audit year, and some audits are still ongoing. And indeed, your own audit was only concluded by Grant Thornton very recently. And that has had a knock-on effect for us all on the current year's audit. I'm pleased that we're now in this position to present the plan to you, and that the finance team are anticipating getting the accounts to us on time and the working papers package. What I can say to you is that we will do our best to conclude the audit as soon as possible, but there's a real possibility we won't meet the 30th of September deadline that's laid out in statute for approval of the accounts. The statute requires that the accounts are approved by the 30th of September, but then published by the end of October. And so that October date is the one that we're really putting as our backstop date, and realistically planning for that at the moment. But of course, if we find that the audit goes more smoothly, or there is any way we can draw in extra resources to conclude the audit by September, we will do that. And it's certainly our intention to move back to that 30th of September deadline by next year's audit. The rest of that section just goes into more detail about the timetable, and it reflects on our audit fee and the level of fees compared with previous years. And it's not nice to have to report that that's an increase in fees. We know that councils have got financial challenges, but indeed the audit profession also has problems in recruiting staff, the inflationary wage claims for not just for Audit Scotland people, but in terms of the firms and the prices that are being quoted through the procurement round for the current round of audits, shown a large increase in the fees. So all I can say is that, I don't enjoy having to report a fee increase to you, but we hope that over the term of our audit appointment, we will prove that we have add value to you as a council and help with your continuous improvement journey. I think that's all really I want to say about the plan at the moment, but we're happy to answer any questions that any members may have. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Archie, Councillor Dryborough.
Yes, thanks very much for your presentation. Best value sometimes gets me, all right, because it may be different here when you talk about best value. Spending £1 in Dumfries and Galloway might be different to spending £1 in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and you probably get more back for spending £1 in Dumfries and Galloway than what you do in Glasgow or Edinburgh. So how do you determine what is best value? Is there a process that you go through as an auditor? Is there a range of sort of feedback that you get on best value for what we spend in Dumfries and Galloway, certainly the financial side of things? And when you talk about, obviously I'm going to talk about fee. How was that determined? Because obviously there was an increase in interest rates and all that last year, and you are like many others, finding it difficult to recruit and things like that. We expect a service from the funds that we spend, but already you're talking about a late report coming in May. All right.
So I'll take the question on best value first. And best value is not just about cost. It's a balance in terms of value for money. And there is statutory guidance produced that local government are to follow on what is meant by best value. So there's 7 themes, and they're not all cost-based. And it's about the use of resources. We recognise what you say, that £1 spent in Dumfries is not the same as £1 spent in Glasgow. So very much the approach of how we assess the best value is following through from the vision and priorities that are set by you in the council, and that then how effectively the council is organised and decisions are taken in accordance with those priorities to deliver on those priorities. So rather than us reporting just blindly on, for instance, local government benchmarking framework indicators across Scotland, which would compare you with Glasgow and everywhere else, we don't feel that's appropriate. Instead, what we're looking to report on is what the council is reporting on its own performance against your own priorities. We call it the golden thread. So we're looking for a very clear link from the priorities to your financial plans, your workforce plans, your IT plans, and we look for them all to be aligned to delivery of those priorities. And then we look for a very important part of the jigsaw is how effectively you report your performance against those priorities. And that was one of the areas where it's been flagged for improvement, which will be a focus. So it's not about benchmarking you with others, it's how well you're performing. Of course, we expect the council to apply a whole range of self-assessment in assessing its performance, and we would expect that you do use indicators of other councils to compare yourself, to maybe identify where other areas are doing things better that you might want to learn from. So we do expect some of that, but we expect it to be in a way that's effective in helping you to deliver improvement internally. So hope that allies some of your concerns around that. The second point about the fees. So in advance of the audit appointment, there is a procurement exercise for all of the audits in the public sector across Scotland, because around about 50% of the audits are carried out by private firms. So indeed, Grant Thornton carried out your audit previously. And they basically set the price for the audits. The previous audit round, the firms included discounts in their audit. They were sort of lowballing to get the work. That isn't the case now. All of the accountancy profession is struggling to recruit people, and fees are going up across the board. So Audit Scotland smooths all of those fees so that so that your fees are equal irrespective of who your auditors are. So you don't get a cheaper fee because you get Audit Scotland or Grant Thornton or anything. They're smoothed across the board, but those have increased to reflect the higher prices that came through the procurement. Also increased expectations. You know, I talked about the international standards of auditing, increased expectations on the audit profession to demonstrate, you know, a higher level of audit evidence that we've felt coming through our audit quality regimes. So that's all added to that fee increase. In terms of the late audits, what I would say is that the late completion of your previous year's audit by Grant Thornton has had an effect. You know, we sort of backed off. The finance team have been great getting us up and running, but it did mean that we were late issuing our plan because we couldn't issue our plan until your previous year's audit had been concluded because it could have identified some risks that we weren't aware of. So that's definitely led to a later start than as is normal. But I'd rather be honest with you up front now and you know, about the risk of a delay, but we'll do our best to draw it back in. But certainly from year 2, we'll be aiming for that timetable. So, yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. So we now have Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Fiona, for that. That's really helpful. You talking us through that. I think it's also really helpful the fact that you alluded to the fact that the internal audit charter, which we've just looked at, there was input from Audit Scotland, which, you know, might have been helpful to include that in the introduction. You know, we have all these professional organisations, including yourself, and I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we are, you know, hitting those spots and actually speaking to the right people. So thank you for confirming that information. You mentioned page 36, the communication of fraud or suspected fraud, and invited members. Now, just to say, I don't have any suspicions. Nobody's contacted me. It's not an issue that I've you know, personally had any concerns about. However, I just wonder, Chair, if we need to ensure that paragraph is maybe extracted and shared with all members of Dumfries and Galloway Council, because I will fully admit that, you know, had somebody come to me with an allegation of fraud within the council, I didn't know who to go and report that to. And, you know, I'm not necessarily saying in committee we're all going to start coming forward, but I think it's really important that members are actually given that signpost, and that, you know, it should be part of our due diligence. The other point that I wanted to maybe ask about was on page 44, and there's reference there that the wider scope and for best value that, you know, Audit Scotland and the Code of Audit Practice will look at. And the third one down there is vision, leadership and governance. Now, obviously, we've had a lot of talk about governance of this committee as such. And I just wonder, as the external auditor, is there opportunity to invite Fiona, colleagues, whoever would be the appropriate person, to any perhaps workshops? I don't want to come back to this incredible workshop that we're going to have and resolve every issue that the council's ever had, but, you know, appreciating that we're paying for an external auditor. We want to ensure that we get the best value for them, and where appropriate, is it possible to invite Audit Scotland to any event or workshop where members deem it appropriate? Is that within our contract, so to speak? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. So I'll maybe bring Vlad in just on the first point, I think, and then pass over to Fiona, I think.
Yes, thank you. In terms of the particular reference, Chair, through you, for the fraud reporting, we do have processes in place, which I'm quite happy to circulate to members. And it's important to know that if you are aware of anything, for all members, it's not just the external auditors. I think I would want to know, as a monitoring officer, first and foremost, thereafter a Section 95 officer, and that's part and parcel of our processes as we speak, and they're there for members and also all officers to follow suit. So happy to circulate that, and happy to obviously extract that paragraph that's been asked this one. I think that's appropriate that all members get the same opportunity. So I think that's a very valid point, and we'll take that forward. But just to be clear, if there are any, I certainly wouldn't want to be discussing it in this forum. So if you do have any concerns in that regard, please let either Section 95 monitoring officer, myself, and thereafter we'll absolutely do everything that we need to do in terms of that, including alerting external audit within that, as well as police, because fraud is, as we know, is a crime, and therefore we would want police involvement depending on their relevant allegation.
Thank you. And just on the back of that, obviously we learned over the last few years just about our own, I think it's the integrity group, which obviously, you know, not to celebrate really, but obviously we had our issues in terms of the investigation at the roads contract, which was, you know, a great challenge to this council in terms financially and otherwise reputationally. But so yes, so I think having that clear mechanism for elected members and others to know that they can, with confidence, report something that they might feel needs looked into a bit more is obviously key. Just on the other point about getting value for money from Audit Scotland, so does that change the scope of what you're effectively being appointed to do if you're sort of turning up for the glorious seminars we're about to have in the near future?
So, Chair, it's really important that the Council sets its own governance processes and the committee structures. It's down for the Council to decide what that looks like. In terms of audit committees, there are very clear guidelines about how an audit committee conducts itself. So we would expect that all to be followed in the first instance. We then look at the effectiveness of the scrutiny arrangements as part of our assessment of the governance. We don't mind what the structure is as long as it's effective and it's working for the council. So just really laying that out. But within the structure that operates in the council, we're happy to be involved in a way that supports members to understand the role of external audit, particularly for members of these committees, where we can help everyone understand the difference between internal audit, external audit, and how you as members can use the work that we do to effectively scrutinise the work of the council. So certainly happy to be involved in that context, and often at the start of audit appointments we do come along to seminars or parts of a committee meeting to give sort of an introduction to external audit and a bit more about the work we do. So happy to do that. Can I just pick up on one thing that was said about internal audit? We didn't review the changes to the internal audit charter specifically. We weren't asked to do that, but we do speak to internal audit about the work and their plans to ensure, you know, we're not duplicating work. And we also do assess the quality of internal audit function as part of our reports on the governance, and we don't have anything that concerns us there, but just to be clear, we didn't look at the specifics of the changes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, but some good points there to be taken forward potentially, so thank you for that. So we have Councillor Beretti next.
Thank you, Chair. Page 45, point 39. And reading the very last sentence, the Auditor General and Accounts Commission are developing a programme of work on climate change. Now, taking point 37, which is the first sentence, challenging financial environment within which the Council, along with other public sector bodies, blah, blah. Having to, do we get to know what these this programme of work might be? Because whenever it comes to talking about making structural changes in council and including within that the sustainability of those changes, this is not going to be an easy thing to do. And as Councillor Dryber has already pointed out, £1 spent in Dumfries and Galloway is different to £1 spent in Glasgow and Edinburgh or London or the Orkneys. So how do we as a council go forward? Because I can see that there's going to be short-term, medium-term and long-term changes, and how is that going to impact on our best value plan? I know it's a bit of a difficult question that to ask, and I might not even have finished yet. Yes, climate change it's a catch-all sentence. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but as we know, this council has taken a long time to get to a certain point, and we're still not even started.
So I'm just, do you want to come in on that if you've
yes,
interpreted
I'm
the question?
happy to respond
clearly?
to that. So we're covering the climate change work described in that paragraph as part of our best value work on the leadership of the council priorities this year. So what we're looking for is how the council plan reflects climate change, and then the focus on climate change that the council has set itself, how it is planning to deliver against those aspirations in terms of do the budgets align to allow delivery of what the council has set out for itself. I recognise the financial challenge for all councils in achieving what has been set out as an aspiration nationally. And I think part of our role is reporting where it's not possible to deliver on aspirations. And so what we're looking for at year one of the audit is what has the council set out to deliver itself and how effectively it's organised itself to deliver on those aspirations. And the national picture will be pulled together from all of the local auditors' work. We have a lot of discussions with chief executives in local authorities acknowledging the scale of the issue. So, for instance, at our recent Audit Scotland annual conference, we had Cleland Snedden from South Lanarkshire talking about the scale of the money that would be required, in South Lanarkshire to actually deliver on the national aspirations, and that that money is just not there in the budgets currently. And so that's one of the messages that we need to pull together through our national reporting programme. So I hope that helps. It's just early days for us at the moment, understanding the council's aspirations on that.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Beretti?
I'm still pondering on that entire question. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because clearly this issue isn't going to get any better, it's going to get worse. So how we as a council tackle it is going to be challenging, and how the Commission and what they come up with on developing a programme is going to be interesting to see how we're going to have to work with that. But yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I suppose the next step would be about having established how well any local authority has aligned its budgets to the priorities, particularly around climate change measures. How do you then measure the performance in terms of achieving those goals? Because I think at the moment it's hard to have that dashboard of measurements that actually says, is this working? We don't know. So there's a bit of difficulty at a national and beyond national level with that as well. I did want to ask a question just about a particular passion of mine is about the archaic thing, which is common goods. And I just wondered if that's something that I noticed that you articulate a little separate piece of work around trusts in the report. But how do you deal with common goods generally? Because it is one of these peculiarities of Scotland.
So we look at the common good funds as they are reported in the council accounts. So we have a role in auditing the disclosures in the accounts. But generally, because the figures are not significant in terms of the scale of the council's activities, we don't do a lot of work on the common goods. From time to time, we do get correspondence, Audit Scotland nationally, on issues surrounding common good concerns, and we would look into those. But as a matter of course, we don't do a lot of work on the common good just because of the scale and having to prioritise our resources there. But we do expect the council to operate in accordance with the common good terms, and obviously if we were aware that there were issues, then it's something we would consider looking at.
So, no, thank you for that, and I appreciate the amounts might not be often that significant at times, but I think it was when you first introduced the discussion around assets and property. So sometimes there's maybe not a financial or a fund level, but sometimes the value of the assets on the balance sheet for buildings, for example, which are actually common good, might have some materiality as well. So it's just because it's not just the cash in the bank, as it were, it's also the actual assets themselves sometimes that have a value. Thank you.
So if we were aware of somebody raising a particular concern about the treatment of an asset or value, then we would consider looking into it, but otherwise we wouldn't. Yeah.
Thank you. So members, I think with that we've obviously got some good information back from Audit Scotland, and we can look forward to seeing them potentially at the big event planned for the next few months. So effectively we've been asked to review and comment on the external audit plan, so I think we can safely say that we've done that. We're happy to agree? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Fiona and Peter. So that brings us on to item 7, which is the scrutiny review on eligibility criteria and controls for Town Centre Living Fund. We've got Fraser Davis here and Jamie Little online, here to assist if members have any questions. So anything to add to the report as it stands?
No, nothing to add, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Yep, I should probably caveat this by the fact that we had the Business Bureau meeting this morning, and one of the points that we were looking at, or we got a verbal update, I should say, on the report presentations and templates for report writing. I'm quite confused by this report. I've been confused a lot in this meeting, it would appear, because some of my questions are being caveated with this. However, the recommendation is to consider the progress made in implementing the recommendations from the scrutiny review. I'm not entirely sure, and I've tried to read through the report a couple of times. I'm not exactly sure what exactly are the progresses, what are the key points. They are somewhat embedded within a lot of the narrative. However, there's not even a clear timeline within this report. So, we start off with the first paragraph, 3.1, with dates of December 21, and then the scrutiny of the 31st of March 2022. We then go through the report, and then there's updates in 3.7 of November 22. Then we go on to the 17th of March 22. There's further dates as well that's been put through here. There's the 3rd of April 2018 in the previous sentence. It's the 14th of March 2023. It's very confusing. And, I'm really concerned that our reports should be able to be picked up by anybody, not just members of the committee, not just members of Dumfries and Galloway Council, but members of the public, and they should be able to pick up these reports and see a clear understanding. We should have open scrutiny. I'm just really concerned by this report. So it's not necessarily the context. I know that there has been work being ongoing. So, it's really about the presentation of these reports. And, we're being asked to consider the progress, but it's not actually really that clear what the progress fully is. So I don't know how we've resolved this issue, if this is a part of ongoing work coming forward. But certainly, again, we've got a new committee as such, due to the fact that there has been the change of administration. I would really like to see a better reporting mechanism on how we can track these progresses for the reports. So, it's not a question as such, perhaps for Jamie, or it's more about, as I say, how do we ensure that we are open and transparent to members of the public so they can see exactly the work we're doing and getting that, what we've just been talking about, best value. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hagman. So there's clearly a couple of things there. One is the actual report in and of itself, where we've been asked to consider the progress. So it might be helpful from likes of Jamie, maybe just to say, well, what is the progress, so all members are clear if that's an issue. And then there's the second point, just about how we go about continually trying to improve how we present information, I suppose, and maybe there's something in that we can take away offline. But I'll hand over to you, Jamie, just to address the report itself in terms of the progress. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Hagman, for the comments. Obviously, we'll take those on board and certainly review that in further reports that we present to all committees. I suppose one thing that it does highlight, though, in terms of the number of dates that are referred to in the previous committee reports, is the level of scrutiny that does go into the Town Centre Living Fund. There have been a number of reports taken to Economy and Resources Committee that we're trying to reflect in the report here. As you'll see at 3.6, one of the agreed recommendations was that there was regular review of the criteria to ensure that future regeneration and housing priorities can be pursued. And while certainly take on board your comments in terms of the layout, hopefully the report shows that is certainly something that has been delivered and highlights that is an outcome. In terms of some of the other progress, what we've referred to in the report includes the fact that the consideration of the town centres has also been broadened out following members' recommendations through this process to include up to 47 settlements across the region as identified in the local development plan for empty properties. In previous versions of the Town Centre Living Fund, especially in the early years, it was very much focused on those settlements with town centres. So hopefully that's fairly clear in terms of other progress that's been made from the back of the scrutiny review. But also a recommendation was that the Town Centre Living Fund should continue to operate in its current form. And recent reports have been agreed by elected members to effectively operate it in a similar form while broadening out the categories to ensure that further investment can be driven into the region.
Thanks, Jamie. So Councillor Hagman, does that, in terms of the progress side of things, does that help clarify a bit in terms of what the report's trying to put forward?
It does, and obviously, as part of ENR, I'm aware that there has been, I think, Jamie, you come to every single committee, there's always, updates and reports coming forward with that. I think just in terms of this report within this forum, I think maybe it would be useful next time if we've got a timeline that's very clear to see, because as I say, it's more in the presentation of that information. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is maybe, I do take the point that there's maybe a logical flow in terms of timeline, in terms of how that could be looked at. But again, that's something that can be taken away. And maybe just a little point on the definition of terms. I did pick up on the 3.77 and 3.78. It talks about town centre projects budget, but it's not necessarily clear unless you've maybe seen the previous reports what that specifically is. And similarly, the empty properties budget, although it might be obvious to some members on the various committees, it doesn't set it out at the start of the report, for example. So that's maybe just a convention or a custom and practice thing. So aside from that, any other questions or comments from members in terms of this report? I don't see any other hands up. So with that, we're happy to agree that we've considered the report. Thank you very much. So there's a few actions. So thanks, Jamie, and thanks, Fraser, for that. I think I don't think we have any other specific business, but obviously there's a few actions from today that information needed to be circulated to members that can be followed up after this, and also the planning can begin for the big event that we're going to be holding in future. For the workshop, for the workshop or seminar. But I think it'd be helpful certainly for all members of this committee, and it'd be good to have those tools in place so we can be more effective members going forward. Okay, thanks everybody.